Chapter 645, Scared Off. Chapter 645, Scared Off. Peng, peng, peng. A fierce battle ensued, and lightning flickered, forcing the others to all step back. Only Hunyo was still standing on the same spot. As the waves of electricity passed over, there was not even the slightest effect on her. How could Zhao Chaoheng dare to allow Ling Han the first 3 moves? If he did, he would be trapped in an absolutely disadvantageous situation. Thus, he could no longer bother about face, and shot out a shower of punches towards that dragon image. Is this the war elephant fist of the Earth Dragon sect? He was surprisingly knowledgeable, managed to recognize it from just one move. This was not the most top-notch secret technique of the Earth Dragon sect, and there were many disciples who knew this technique, thus it was not strange that Zhao Chaoheng managed to recognize the technique. Ling Han did not answer. Since they were already fighting, defeating his opponent would be the most effective response. Zhao Chaoheng humphed. Although he dared not underestimate Ling Han any longer, it was not to the extent that he would actually fear Ling Han. As he waved his fists in attack, his battle prowess was not the slightest bit weakened, and he managed to tie with Ling Han. He was in the 9th layer of the spiritual infant tier. Furthermore, he had stayed on this cultivation level for a very, very long time, and had also tempered his cultivation to an incredibly pure level. Thus, with the advantage of being on a higher cultivation tier, he was not the slightest bit weaker than Ling Han. But this stunned him even more, because his battle prowess should definitely have been in the top levels of the spiritual infant tier, yet a young man in the flower blossom tier was capable of fighting him on equal footing. This gave him a tremendous shock. This was practically inconceivable. "Junior, are you a disciple of the Earth Dragon sect?" he shouted out a question. If that was the case, he would say a few circumstantial words, and not continue the battle. After all, the Earth Dragon sect was an even more powerful party than a party with heaven tier level power. Even if that Li Yuanming got whipped even worse, so what? No. Ling Han said with a smile. Guess again. Guess your sister. Zhao Chaoheng did not say any more nonsense. He only continued to deliver punches. He planned to get the absolute upper hand in this battle, and then call a ceasefire. In that way, he would not offend Ling Han, but would still retain his own face. As for Li Yuanming, this was none of his business in the first place, and it was already very kind of him to step out and give a hand. The two of them were embroiled in a huge battle, and in the end, the victor was still undecided. Zhao Chaoheng wanted to quickly end the battle, and immediately drew a long saber. There were closely interwoven patterns on the saber's blade. This was a spirit tool that he cultivated with his life force. It had originally been a normal Tier 7 weapon, but after he had nurtured it for dozens of years, it had now evolved into a spirit tool. This was a spirit tool that he had nurtured himself. Even if there were 2 spirit tools that were completely the same, this Blue Thunder Saber would be able to release even greater power in his hands. The answer was simple: it was most suited to himself. Ling Han glanced at it, and could not help but smile strangely, and asked, "You really want to compete in spirit tools with me?" With his saber in hand, Zhao Chaoheng's confidence soared. If it was similarly a level 7 spirit tool, this Blue Thunder Saber of his could release 100%, or even 120% of its full power. And if he was using a spirit tool that did not belong to him, the maximum amount of power that could be released would be only about 60 to 70%. Ling Han's right hand vibrated, and the demon birth sword was drawn. Wang, wang, wang. 3 patterns were lit, and instantly, a terrifying aura spread out. This was a level 10 spirit tool, and even if Ling Han was unable to release its full power, the difference in level was still there. How could it be beaten by a 7th tier spirit tool? What spirit tool is that? Zhao Chaoheng's expression changed in shock. As a descendant of a heaven tier level clan, his eyes were naturally not too bad. He instantly recognized how extraordinary the demon birth sword was. "You still want to fight?" Ling Han gave the sword a shake with a smile, and said, "Perhaps that saber of yours will be cut in half by me." Zhao Chaoheng instantly looked hesitant. If Ling Han was an ordinary flower blossom tier cultivator, then even if he wielded a level 10 spirit tool, Zhao Chaoheng would not be afraid, because he would not be touched by the sword at all. However, Ling Han's battle prowess was enough to equal his own, and this would be a problem. Blue Thunder Saber was a treasured saber that he had nurtured for dozens of years. Even if there was only a slight crack on it, he would feel heartache. No. He decided to prioritize safety first. After all, he did not have too close a relation with Li Yuanming, but after some thought, he still said, "Young man, Li Yuanming is a member of the Li clan, and the patriarch of the Li clan is a heaven-tier elite. You had best not go too far." Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "I won't go too far. I merely want to kill him." Zhao Chao Heng's expression stiffened. "You call that not going too far? What would be considered going too far, then?" But whatever he could do and say, he had already done and said. There was absolutely no reason for him to battle Ling Han to the death, for Li Yuanming's Sarkehe wasn't his brother-in-law, after all. Li Yuanming was scared into taking a few hurried steps backwards. He suddenly turned around and ran. He did not want to die in the slightest. Ling Han did not pursue. He merely drew out the setting sun bow and notched an arrow. Xiao, the sharp arrow shot out, and lightning flickered around it, instantly increasing its speed to the maximum capacity. Pu, it pierced through Li Yuanming's back, then through his heart, and with another Pu, shot out, and stabbed into the firm mountain rock. Li Yuanming stumbled for a few steps before finally dropping onto the ground. Fresh blood seeped out, and formed a pool beneath his body. His face was filled with regret. The two of them had not had any deep enmity, and he had merely blocked the way. If he had not been so domineering, and put on airs with his identity as a member of the Li clan and wanted to take Ling Han's life, how could he possibly end in this manner? Yet no matter how much he regretted, it was useless. His eyes were open stubbornly, yet there was no longer any sign of life in them. Ling Han walked over, and put away the arrow. This was forged from a level 7 previous metal. If he would consume one arrow every time he shot out an arrow, probably only the wealth of a shattering void-tier ultimate elite cultivator could support such exorbitant expense. Zhao Chao Heng looked at Ling Han's back, and suddenly asked, "Young man, how do I address you?" Ling Han turned back to look at him, and answered, "Ling Han." "Ling Han." Zhao Chao Heng nodded, and said, "I will remember this name. Young man, you are indeed very strong. Even if I have cultivated a few dozen years more than you, and am on a higher cultivation tier than you, you still battled me to a tie. However, there are really too many prodigies in this generation. My Zhao clan also has a super genius. His name is Zi Yuan. He is only 23 years old this year, but is already in the second layer of the spiritual infant tier. His battle prowess is stronger than even mine." Ling Han grinned, and said, "If there is a chance, I would like to spar with him." Zhao Chao Heng nodded. At the same time, he felt incredibly rueful. With his natural talent and ability, whichever time he was at in the last 10,000 years, he would definitely be considered one of the top-notch geniuses. But this era had received a time of great prosperity of martial arts, as if everything accumulated in the last 10,000 years had to be released. Not only was there a major improvement in the overall level of martial arts and power, 100 flowers bloomed in the younger generation with the successive appearances of various geniuses, who could easily stomp all over the previous generation with their superior strength. He was really born at the wrong time. If he could be born another 50 years later, how good would that be? Ling Han continued his advance. Hunyo held onto his hand as she ate various snacks. Rabbit, meanwhile, was on his other side. It was already feeling a great amount of pressure. The power of lightning was getting more and more fearsome. "We're about to arrive." Ling Han looked ahead, and revealed an expression of happiness. The heaven cloud purple thunder was right ahead, and once fused, he would be able to cultivate a real body of lightning. In front of them, masses of people appeared. There was also a gigantic reservoir of lightning. Chapter 646, Clear Harmony Palace Hall. Chapter 646, Clear Harmony Palace Hall. This reservoir of lightning was at least 100 feet wide. On the other side of it, there was a cave. One side of the cave's entrance had collapsed, giving off a rather shabby feeling. Waves in the pool of lightning rolled tumultuously. There was terrifying divine lightning flashing within, making for a shocking sight. Many had gathered around it to observe. There were some that even wanted to force their way in, but when they reached the cave entrance and made an attempt, they immediately gave up. There were many signs of scorching and charring on them from being electrocuted, and they looked terrible. Linghan looked at it, and said, "I fear that the power of this pool of lightning has already reached the level of the deity transformation tier." Though the current young generation was catching up really fiercely, but even such geniuses that could be considered as belonging to the adult generation like the small Saber King and Lang Yatian had not managed to break through to the deity transformation tier, what more anyone else. However, it was all right even if their cultivation level had not advanced so far, as they could use treasures to compensate for their shortcomings. Linghan saw someone take out an umbrella, open it, and enter the pool of lightning. As the flashes of lightning barraged it, this umbrella actually glowed with flickering light, and became a shield that blocked all the incoming flashes of lightning. It was a girl. She was exceedingly beautiful, and had a shapely figure. As she stepped on the waves of lightning, she was as graceful as a fairy that could enchant anyone. Wenren Chen from the wide sun sec. What? I've never heard of her. Hihi, Fairy Wenren is very low profile, but has astonishing talent. She is extremely strong, and even she herself is as beautiful as a fairy from the heavens. She is not the slightest bit inferior to the Pearl of the Wang clan or the beautiful Pearl of the Hu clan. Whether she is strong or otherwise, I don't know, but she is indeed really beautiful. Hihi, if you think she's pretty, you can go ahead. Fairy Wenren has said before, any man that can defeat her in a battle of equal cultivation level or at the same age range would be qualified to become her future husband. Really? Of course it's real. However, she did not say that you would definitely be able to marry her after winning, but merely that you would gain the qualification to. Even so, this still made many young men feel eager to give it a try. This Wenren Chen was so beautiful she would make any man's heart tremble. The moment they closed their eyes, all they could see was her graceful demeanor, and the extremely beautiful and elegant way she stepped on the pool of lightning. There was no way to erase that image at all. I advise you all to give up the thought. Jioming already has his eye on Fairy Wenren, and unless you all think you can compete with Jioming, it would be better for you to not waste your breath. Jioming. When they heard this name, a great many people looked astonished. This was a top genius that had obtained a direct ticket into the Restore Heaven Academy. Only in these 2 years had his reputation grown tremendously. Previously, he had been working hard on his cultivation in the savage, deep mountains, where he wrestled with various demonic beasts. Before then, he had never appeared in public. Precisely because of that, Jioming's bloodthirstiness was extremely high. He never knew when to hold his punches as he made his merciless moves. Who knew how many geniuses had died by his hand after his return 2 years ago? Some of them were even members of powerful parties and clans, yet he had still remained safe and unharmed all this time. There was but one reason. Jioming was a disciple of the Earth Dragon sect. It was one of the 5 ancient great sects, and who would dare touch one of the disciples that had walked out? Furthermore, Jioming had killed them in one-on-one battles, which could be claimed to be extremely fair. What party would dare to suppress him? This was the benefit of having a powerful background. Otherwise, someone like Jioming, who did not have any scruples about murder, would have long since been killed off in secret. Everyone dared not speak careless words. Without any forewarning, Jioming would wound or even kill. He did not have reservations of any sort. If he found out that they bore romantic desires for Wenren Chen behind his back, he might hunt them down. This god of misfortune was really not someone to be trifled with. Linghan smiled calmly, and said, "Looks like some people have already gone in. The heaven cloud purple thunder should be inside the cave, and this pool of lightning is merely a little bit power that has spilled out," Rabbit agreed. "Go, go, go." Hunyo tugged Linghan's hand, and walked uncaringly into the pool of electricity. Linghan stepped out, but the thunderclap 9th heaven was already circulating. His body exuded flashes of lightning. He could not possibly defend against lightning on the level of the deity transformation tier, but this lightning was not someone's attack. He would use his own electricity to defend against the lightning here, and merely ask to be able to safely cross the distance. Thus, the difficulty level was considerably reduced. But what was unexpected was that Hunyo's body actually became a bottomless pit. When flashes of lightning shot at her, they would be easily absorbed by her, making Linghan stare with wide eyes. This was lightning on the level of the deity transformation tier. Putting aside Linghan, even if it was small Saber King, he would have to be extremely careful. Hunyo, on the other hand, accepted all comers, and absorbed them cleanly. When Rabbit saw this, it hurriedly hopped over. Behind Hunyo, a small path appeared in the pool of lightning. It was as if a supreme elite had forcefully sliced out a safe zone, but as Hunyo walked further away, this small path was quickly drowned by lightning, and it once again became a complete pool of lightning. Around them, the people were all in disbelief. However, their eyes were focused on Linghan as they naturally thought that this was something that Linghan had done. Who would suspect a little girl who looked to be only 7 or 8 years old or a large white rabbit? With Hunyo leading the way, Linghan soon crossed the pool of electricity and arrived at the entrance to the cave. I am not full yet. Hunyo looked dissatisfied and turned back to look at the pool of electricity behind her. Linghan smiled and said, "Then, you can go and absorb some more lightning." "Never mind. Better to help Nyo's Linghan find the heaven cloud purple thunder," Hunyo said very sensibly. This little girl was really becoming more and more adorable. Hihi, Nyo is so obedient, so Linghan definitely will marry Nyo in future. The little girl immediately began to make her own bargain. The two of them entered into the cave, and Rabbit, who did not have any rights, followed behind them. That was because the moment it wanted to hop alongside them, Hunyo would bite it and say that it was in the way. Thus, Lord Rabbit could only follow behind them obediently, feeling very unhappy. Just think, at the very least, it was still a powerful demonic beast of the spiritual infant tier, so why did it have to follow behind a human brat that was only in the flower blossom tier? Yee, look there. Linghan's eyes swept over, and his figure had already leaped over. He saw that there were ruins ahead. It used to be some kind of construction, but now, only the foundations were left behind. All around, there were worn down and broken walls. Who knew how many years ago this had happened? Is this the Clear Harmony Palace Hall? Linghan mumbled to himself. He walked around in the surroundings, and actually did manage to find a damaged door plaque in the ruins. However, there was only one word left behind: harmony. This had to be the Clear Harmony Palace Hall. Linghan could absolutely confirm that this was the Clear Harmony Palace Hall that Zi Shuexian had mentioned. This lightning, these ruins, and this harmony. No such great coincidence existed in the world. After 10,000 years, a great change had indeed occurred. Linghan could not help but feel rueful. If it hadn't been for the fact that an earthquake had happened, and the imminent appearance of a thunder spirit, would he have been able to discover this place? This mountain was huge. The inside of the mountain had practically been excavated completely. As a result, the internal space was also extremely massive. This Clear Harmony Palace Hall had not been built at the end of the cave, and there was still a very expansive space behind it. Linghan hesitated. Was what Zi Shuexian had left behind inside the Clear Harmony Palace Hall, or deeper inside the cave behind it? The message that she had left behind only mentioned the boundless mountains and the Clear Harmony Palace Hall, but did not provide clear details. After thinking for a very long time, Linghan decided to first search around in the ruins of the Clear Harmony Palace Hall. Chapter 647, Thunder Lotus. Chapter 647, Thunder Lotus. Since the Thunder Empress had mentioned the Clear Harmony Palace Hall, this should be a key word. Otherwise, Linghan could turn the boundless mountains completely upside down. For a flower blossom tier elite cultivator, it was really nothing too difficult to level a mountain. Linghan struck out with his palm, and devastating sword chi surged forth. Pu, pu, pu. The bricks on the ground were all turned into dust. Hunyo puffed up her cheeks, and blew out a hurricane that blew all the dust away. Linghan destroyed again, and Hunyo cleaned again. Soon, all the ruins of the Clear Harmony Palace Hall were non-existent, and only rugged mountain rock was left behind. However, there was one brick that was not destroyed. Linghan smiled. It looked like he had guessed correctly. It was possible that the thing that Zi Shuexian had left behind was hidden underneath this. He gripped that brick and lifted it. Yet, he discovered that this brick was extraordinarily heavy. No matter what he did, he couldn't move it an inch. Unconsciously, a competitive spirit grew, and with a loud shout, he said, "Rise." The combined use of origin power and pure brute force exploded with astonishing power. But the embarrassing thing was that the brick still did not move the slightest, as if it had fused with the mountain rock. Ling Han could not help but feel angry, and simply destroyed the surrounding rock, bypassing this brick. Pu. He destroyed some rocks, but soon realized that he could only dig about half a foot into the ground, and could not dig any deeper than that. The toughness of this mountain rock was not the slightest bit inferior to that brick. At least, he could do nothing else against it. Ling Han drew out the demon birth sword, and slashed out at the brick. This time, there was finally some effect. A very light mark appeared on the brick. However, how long would he have to chop at it in this way? Ling Han decided to use the 10,000 techniques return to 1 to blast the brick. He had already condensed pseudo-ray now, and with 29 flashes of sword chi combined with 10,000 techniques return to 1, adding the sharpness of the demon birth sword, the combined destructive power should be incredibly terrifying. Let Nyo. Yet Hu Nyo pounced over first, and shouted loudly, "Stinky rock, actually dare not to obediently break apart. Nyo's very angry, Nyo wants to chew you to pieces." Catcher, she began chewing, and a terrifying thing happened. The rock shattered at the impact of her teeth. "Yi, Hu Nyo, your teeth have become more powerful again," Ling Han exclaimed in surprise. Previously, even though Hu Nyo's little white teeth were also forceful, but they definitely were not as astonishing as they were now. After absorbing the electricity, Nyo became more powerful, Hu Nyo said proudly, and began to take big bites again. Soon, she had bitten a hole the size of a human face on that brick, and buried her whole face in. No wonder her bites on Lord Rabbit's behind have become more and more painful. Rabbit could not help but rub its backside, its mouth twitching. Ling Han swept a glance at it, and said, "You are a freak too. After being bitten by Hu Nyo so many times, not one bit of flesh has fallen off. You're definitely the first." "That's right." Rabbit could not help but look proud of itself. Lord Rabbit's ancestor is a prodigy, and could claim to be an emperor among demonic beasts, invincible in his generation. With the effects of his bloodline, Lord Rabbit is naturally a monster. As they spoke, Hu Nyo's whole body had disappeared into the hole that she had chewed out of the brick. Then, with a putong, the tiny feet that had been protruding outside suddenly disappeared. "Ling Han, Nyo dropped down," Hu Nyo said delicately. The little girl had only chewed out a hole about the size of her own body, but that was all right. How could anyone in the flower blossom tier not be capable of twisting his bones? Ling Han used a powerful technique to squeeze his skeleton, and instantly, every bone in his body gave off a chong, chong, chong sound, like a gong was being beaten. There was nothing to be done. He had cultivated the indestructible heaven scroll, and the toughness of his skeleton was comparable to precious metal of the same level, so it was still slightly difficult for him to change the shape of his body. He stretched out his body so that it became thin, then slipped down through the hole that Hu Nyo had chewed out. Rabbit had a slim figure, and had long since hopped down. It was unlike what Ling Han had expected. He had initially thought that there was a secret room underneath here, where the thing that Zi Shuezian had left behind years ago was, but who would have imagined that this was actually a passage? The way ahead was completely black, and who knew where this passageway headed to? Really, wasn't it just leaving a letter or something like that? Does it have to be so complicated? Ling Han mocked the situation as he advanced through the passageway. He looked closely, and could see there were obscure patterns on all four walls of the passage and the floor. They were of a very high level, at least, they were above the level that he had been in his last life. This should have been set up by the Thunder Empress after she had ascended to the shattering void tier. No wonder I was unable to destroy the mountain rock just now, since it had been refined by a shattering void tier ultimate cultivator. How could it be destroyed with my current capability? Still, Hu Nyo's teeth is really getting more and more powerful. Ling Han mused. The little girl's unique ability was endlessly displayed, and furthermore, it was getting more and more amazing. In the past, her little stomach was a bottomless pit, but that was only eating some food, and furthermore, there was an ending point, but now, she could absorb easily even electricity on the level of the deity transformation tier. In the past, her teeth were indeed sharp, possessing destructive power on the level of 20 stars of the flower blossom tier when she herself was only in the spiritual pedestal tier, but that was only a breach of an entire cultivation tier. Now, though, she could even chew through the cave dwelling that a shattering void tier ultimate cultivator had set up even if more than 10,000 years had passed, and the strength was completely uncomparable to when it was newly set up, Linghan could only slice out a crack after so much effort. With such a comparison, Hunyou's monstrous strength could clearly be seen. Yet Linghan was worried. This little girl was getting increasingly stronger. Was it because that human-shaped spirit base in her dantian had awakened? He absolutely did not think that it was a spirit base, but a spiritual form that had its own consciousness and will. When he imagined that Hunyou could possibly become a completely different person one day, an absolute stranger, Linghan shivered, and his heart felt pained. Hunyou's little nose sniffed. She clapped her hands, and exclaimed, Linghan, Linghan, something in front smells nice. Linghan smiled, and forcefully dispersed his worries. He strode forwards, and said, this nose of yours is really good. That's right, Niu is the most awesome. The passage soon ended, and a wall appeared in front of them. It was very wide and tall. On the wall, there were innumerable small squares. There was a human face on every small square. They were both male and female, old and young, and as many as 999 faces. By the side of the wall, there was a small pool of electricity. A lotus flower actually bloomed inside the pool of electricity. The lotus flower had borne fruit, but what it bore was not a lotus seed head, but a round fruit about the size of a human hand. It was currently flickering with purple-colored light. The fragrance had precisely originated from the fruit. The pool of electricity had just about dried up, so they could clearly see that the lotus flower's roots were stuck in the bottom of the electricity pool. The roots were reddish-purple in color. Heaven cloud purple thunder. Linghan gasped in surprise. Indeed, the heaven cloud purple thunder had evolved after so many years, and he could see that it had reached the important moment in which it would transform into a spirit. The fruit that the lotus flower had borne was the thunder spirit. The moment it ripened, the fruit would split open, and the thunder spirit would be born. From then onwards, it would freely move unfettered in the world, and become a real living thing. But at this moment, the thunder spirit had borne a fruit of Tao, and it was precisely the moment when its defenses were the weakest. If one were to pluck it and eat it, he would be able to obtain good fortune, and gain unimaginable benefits. This was a life born from nature. It was unimaginably nutritious, and even shattering void-tier ultimate cultivators would be enticed. Linghan, too, felt a rush of excitement, and temporarily forgot the matter about the wall as his whole focus was concentrated on that thunder lotus. Peng, peng, peng. However, the sound of footsteps were heard from behind them. Chapter 648, Sword Maniac, Lu Yuanshan. Chapter 648, Sword Maniac, Lu Yuanshan. Though the hole that Hunyou chewed out was small, it was not a problem for a flower blossom tier cultivator. After transcending mortality, wouldn't it be a piece of cake if one wanted to temporarily change his physical frame? Linghan turned around, and saw a man stride towards them. Though it was a dark space, he was exuding divine light. He was tall and slender. His brows, eyes, and nose looked like swords. Even his lips looked like two swords stuck together. Such a man should give off an incomparably bizarre feeling, wasn't that so? His whole body looked like it was about to become a sword. But when all these features were on him, it gave off an incomparable feeling of harmony. There was absolutely nothing strange. On the other hand, he seemed to have an indescribable charm to him. Moreover, others would usually store their weapon in their spatial spirit tools, and simply summon it out if they needed to use it. He, meanwhile, held it in his hand as if he could not leave it even for 1 second. He was practically a sword maniac. That man naturally saw Linghan, Hunyou, and Rabbit as well. However, his eyes merely swept over them once. They turned to focus on that thunder lotus, and he calmly said, "You all may leave." "Fuck, who do you think you are to dare to shoo away your Lord Rabbit?" Rabbit was instantly pissed off. The man actually did not get angry, nor did he become astonished from seeing a demonic beast speak. Instead, he said in deadpan voice, "I am Lu Yuan Shen, nicknamed Sword Maniac. I am currently designing a thunder-aligned sword technique, called Exploding Thunder Sword Technique. I need this thunder fruit to refine my sword intent." He really was called Sword Maniac. Could it not be so lacking in creativity? Ling Han mocked him internally, but said out loud, "You want to refine your sword spirit, but I, too, need to refine my body of lightning, so I cannot let you have it. Then, there's nothing to be done. I can only kill you. You naturally would not need the thunder fruit by then," Lu Yuanshan said calmly without the slightest bit of anger in his tone. In his eyes, Ling Han could not see any killing intent. It was as if this was something very ordinary to him. He was indeed a sword maniac. His whole heart was focused on the sword. In his eyes, killing was not killing. It was simply sweeping away any obstructions on his path. Naturally, there was no killing intent circulating inside him, because there would definitely be no one out on a jog who discovered a stone blocking their path, yet would exude killing intent whilst planning to move the stone away. And Ling Han currently was such a stone. Ling Han summoned the demon birth sword, and sighed internally. It looked like he would not be able to avoid this fight. What a fine sword. Lu Yuanshan stared at the demon birth sword, his eyes lighting up instantly. He could not help but say, "Can you let me study this sword for a while?" Ling Han's face twitched. "We are about to fight, and you have obviously declared your intention to kill me, yet you actually want me to lend you my sword to study. Is there something wrong with your brain?" He shook his head, and said, "No. Why not?" Lu Yuanshan looked confused. In his eyes, treasured swords should be appreciated, and should gain the admiration of all swordsmen in the world. Ling Han was rendered speechless. In the face of someone with such spine-chillingly low intellect, what should he say? A thought streaked in his mind, and he said, "If you defeat me, I'll let you admire it. Otherwise, how would you be qualified?" Lu Yuanshan stared blankly, then nodded in quick succession, and said, "True, true. Such a treasured sword should not be admired by the common men. I must first prove my own ability." He, too, drew his sword, and what surprised Ling Han was that this guy's sword was actually made of wood. Ha 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 ha. Rabbit directly held its stomach in uproarious laughter. It flopped down on its behind on the ground, and kicked its back paws in laughter. Lord Rabbit is about to die from laughing. There is actually someone that would use a wooden sword. Are you planning to kill or chase off ghosts? Yet there was not the slightest change in expression on Lu Yuanshan's face. He held the sword in hand, and the woodenness on his face completely disappeared. His brows and lips stretched out and heroic spirit flourished. The sword intent all over his body became stronger. Ling Han did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. Although his personality was a bit strange, his accomplishment in the sword arts could possibly be shockingly high. That was because there was usually only a slight difference between a genius and a maniac and a weirdo. "This is my self-invented oaken three swords," Lu Yuanshan said. He lightly shook the wooden sword, and immediately, a few dozen illusionary images appeared. Those were the after-images he had left behind after making his sword vibrate too fast. Ling Han was astonished. One had to know that when the speed of wielding the sword reached a certain extent, a bottleneck would appear, the so-called limit. That was because there was a maximum limit to one's origin power, and there were also limitations to one's body. It was not possible that one's bones and muscles could support high-frequency vibration. Body arts were one solution, as they could strengthen one's physique, and allow one to have the capability to break through these limits. But, Lu Yuanshan obviously did not cultivate any body arts, yet was capable of surpassing his limits. This was naturally inconceivable. That was right. Why did he use a wooden sword? That was because a wooden sword was light. Otherwise, if it was a treasured sword forged from level 6 or 7 precious metal, it would at least weigh over 100 kilograms. Meanwhile, a wooden sword would, at most, weigh 1 or 2 kilograms. With high-frequency vibration, there would naturally be a world of difference in the burden caused by the two. Ling Han breathed in deeply. Mysterious 3000 was already prepared and ready, and he said, Then, let me experience it. Lu Yuanshan struck. Xiao, his whole body moved with his sword, and he instantly arrived in front of Ling Han. As his sword swept over, it was like a deity had descended. He waved out with his sword, and endless sparks of light showered, resplendent and bright. It could not be described with words. Ling Han huffed lightly, and the mysterious 3000 shot out. Xiao, 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 xiao. Peng, 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 peng. The sparks from the swords clashed, and an astonishing light shone. In the aftermath, a shock wave swept out, and collided with this tiny little cave's walls. Thankfully, this cave had been refined by a shattering void-tier ultimate cultivator. If not, they would have both definitely been buried alive. As the sword's light surged past, Ling Han and Lu Yuanshan stood 10 meters apart. Their clothes had been damaged, and there was even blood spilled from both of them, but it was nothing serious. Ling Han felt incomparably astonished. The other was actually capable of taking on the mysterious 3000. Though Lu Yuanshan's cultivation level was higher, and had reached the 5th layer of the spiritual infant tier, Ling Han had used the mysterious 3000. Furthermore, it was struck out with the demon birth sword, so it should have been sufficient to sweep aside all contenders in the spiritual infant tier. Powerful, he was really powerful. Furthermore, that wooden sword of his was not ordinary, either. It was definitely not made out of any common wood, but rather a very high-level material for it to be able to parry the demon birth sword. More importantly, he had already condensed sword ray, and it was definitely nothing so simple as being condensed from merely 10 flashes of sword chi. It possessed terrifying power. With all these factors added together, Lu Yuanshan was capable of parrying the mysterious 3000. Yet there was no change in expression on Lu Yuanshan's face, as if he was not the slightest bit confused why Ling Han could equal him when he was only in the flower blossom tier cultivator. He only released more sword intent, raised his wooden sword, and another slash was sweeping over. Ling Han circulated the thunderclap 9th heaven, and used the demon fairy steps. His body suddenly sped up and retreated, letting this slash pass him by. He held his sword crossed over his chest, getting ready to use 10,000 techniques return to 1. Lu Yuanshan also stopped, his face serious. He stared closely at Ling Han, and as he raised the wooden sword slightly, a green-colored light flickered at the point of his sword. My third strike, harassing slash. No matter how fast your motion technique is, it would be useless. Being locked onto by my sword intent, even if you run to the ends of the earth, this slash will still catch up with you and strike. Ling Han was speechless. Couldn't you come up with a better name? Chapter 649, Shimon June. Chapter 649, Shimon June. Concentrate on the fight, don't make me mock you. Ling Han shouted. Accumulating energy for 10,000 techniques return to 1 would only take 1 to 2 breaths time. Moreover, he could activate it no matter how little time he had used to accumulate energy, though the less energy gathered, the less the power released would be. Lu Yuanshan flew out, and as his wooden sword swept past, a wide sword ray slashed out, exuding a terrifying light. With a long whistle, Ling Han raised his sword to parry the attack. The moment 10,000 techniques return to 1 was used, 29 flashes of sword chi condensed into pseudo-ray, and with the stimulation of 10,000 techniques return to 1, this strike could pierce through even the defenses of the deity transformation tier. It was, after all, a level 10 spirit tool. Hong. Pseudo-ray and true ray collided, and endless sparks were roused, filling the whole mountain cave. When the light vanished, both Ling Han and Lu Yuanshan were visibly wounded. It was obvious that neither of them had gotten the advantage in the last strike. However, Ling Han's physique was really too strong, the wounds that he had were much lighter. Furthermore, he had also cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, so his injuries were currently healing at a very fast rate. Lu Yuanshan returned his sword to its sheath, and said, I am unable to defeat you. Ling Han nodded, and said, it would also be very difficult for me to defeat you. Currently, his trump card was no longer the 3 styles of black origin, but his 3 mystical powers. If he summoned the setting sun bow, and even used an arrow forged from a level 8 previous metal, with the simultaneous use of all 3 mystical powers, the power was naturally even higher. Lu Yuanshan turned around and left, without casting another look at the Thunder Lotus, seeming very free and at ease. This man was very strange, but met his gains or losses with equanimity. He was only too focused on his sword arts, and could not understand human emotion. His emotional intelligence was really too low, but he could not really be considered as an evil person. The world was indeed big. There were innumerable able people as well as geniuses. He had never even heard of this Lu Yuanshan, but the latter had appeared just like that. Pa. Lu Yuanshan had just left, when the sound of footsteps were heard again. Was there no end to it? Ling Han hurriedly ran over to the side of the electricity pool, and plucked that Thunder Lotus. This was not a real divine herb, it was merely a unique form taken by the power of lightning, a kind of metamorphosis. Thus, it was useless even if he wanted to plant it in the Black Tower, as it was impossible that a second one would grow. The Thunder Spirit had not yet successfully developed, so it naturally could not be considered a real living creature. It did not have any consciousness to speak of, and added with the fact that the pool of electricity had already dried up, Ling Han very easily plucked the Thunder Lotus, and stored it into the Black Tower. He was not in a rush to refine it as of yet. The sound of footsteps neared. This time, there were 5 people, 1 man and 4 women. The man was extremely handsome, and the 4 women were very beautiful, but they were too flirtatious. Every move and gesture, every smile and frown made it seem like they were trying to seduce others. Their flirty temperament was ingrained bone deep in them. The man's gaze swept over, and when he saw the empty electricity pool, a cold expression appeared on his face. He shouted, "Are you the one who took away the heaven cloud purple thunder?" Ling Han did not answer. Instead, he turned around to look at that wall that was covered entirely in human faces. "How dare you? My young master is asking you a question, and you dare not answer." One of the women humphed. "Ugly woman, you dare to act fierce to Nyo's Ling Han?" Hu Nyo was abruptly angered, and glared at the speaker, her killing intent flaring. Bite her to death." Rabbit yelled out from one side, wishing for the whole world to be in chaos. Yet Hu Nyo twitched her mouth, and said, "She's too smelly, Nyo can't bite." "Then why do you bite Lord Rabbit so happily?" Rabbit was about to die from fury. "Rabbit meat smells nice, delicious." Hu Nyo's eyes lit up. "You all," the woman that had shouted in rebuke just now was enraged. This human and rabbit actually dared to ignore her? Hold on, a rabbit could actually speak? The man looked impatient. He said, "I am Shimen Jun, a disciple of the Wind Moon sect. Hand over the heaven cloud purple thunder, or I will definitely kill you." The Wind Moon sect. Ling Han could not help but give out a ha, and asked, "Is the Wind Moon sect very awesome?" My young master is the 4th disciple of the sect master of the Wind Moon sect. He has already broken through to the spiritual infant tier when he was only 34 years old. With that kind of cultivation level, he is qualified to rank as one of the topmost geniuses in the whole middle state. A second woman praised. This was obviously very effective to Shimen Jun. He crossed his arms over his chest proudly, and posed in a way that said, "I am very awesome, you all come and worship me." Ling Han said, "Looks like the sect master of the Wind Moon sect not only has a dead son, but will have one less disciple too. Such an evil, despicable sect. One day, I will definitely erase it cleanly." What? Shimen Jun could not help but be shocked, and cast a few more glances at Ling Han. "Could it be that you are the one who killed junior brother disciple Hu?" "Correct." Ling Han applauded. Shimen Jun instantly laughed loudly, and said, "This really means the heavens are on my side. Master has already commanded that whoever can apprehend or kill the criminal that has murdered junior brother disciple Hu will be the one he passes down the position of the sect master to. Today, not only will I get the heaven cloud purple thunder, I will also become the young sect master of the Wind Moon sect." He was too pleased. These were 2 happy events simultaneously happening. How lucky could he be? "Congratulations, young master." No, it should be "Congratulations to young sect master." "Congratulations, young sect master." The 4 women all exclaimed in happiness as they all pounced over to offer a sweet kiss. Shimen Jun did not refuse any of them, and his hands even groped all over the bodies of the women. If it was not for the fact that Ling Han was not dealt with yet, they were sure not to mind have a session of right on the spot. Ling Han covered Hu Nyo's eyes, and murderous intent appeared on his face as he said, "What an illicit group of man and women. It is a disrespect to the universe not to kill you, as the clear, bright skies would be hidden by the filth." Without a second word, the lightning on his body flashed, and had already surged over. "How dare you!" The four women pounced out at the same time, to counter-attack Ling Han. Ling Han waved his sword, and as the demon birth sword danced, who would be able to stand against its might? Pu, 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 pu. Four heads flew up into the skies, and four headless corpses danced as their severed necks spurted out blood like crazy. "No!" Shimon Jun roared in rage. Though he had no shortage of beautiful women, these four were his favorite. Not only were their looks above average, they were flirtatious and seductive. Their cultivation levels were not low, either, and they could frequently act on his behalf, saving him a great amount of trouble. "You deserve to die." He glared at Ling Han, his eyes about to spit out flames in his rage. "Die, your sister." Ling Han charged again, and as the lightning on his body flickered, his speed was shockingly fast. Shimon Jun could only parry based on his instincts. Two short hammers appeared in his hands. They were black, and there was a round pattern on the hammers which exuded a terrifying aura, making the hammers appear to be very extraordinary. Peng! Still, though he had managed to block Ling Han's sword, he was completely unable to disperse the terrible power behind this strike. His whole body was instantly sent flying by this blow. Peng! He crashed into the cave wall, and the impact caused a mist of blood to spurt out from all over his body. One had to know that this cave wall had been refined by a shattering void tier ultimate elite, so how could it not be hard? Shimon Jun looked astonished. He was in the spiritual infant tier, yet was actually unable to match a single strike from Ling Han. How could this be possible? There is nothing impossible. You are only the frog at the bottom of a well, so how could you possibly know what extent the truly strong elites in this world can reach? Ling Han brandished his sword again. The disciples of the Wind Moon sect were all shameless, vulgar people, and none of them was to be pitied for dying. Pu, Shimon Jun's head too flew upwards. Chapter 650, A Colossal Lie. Chapter 650, A Colossal Lie. There will be more and more people, we have to finish quickly. Ling Han sheathed his sword, and turned back to look at the wall that was blocking their way forwards. They could no longer advance. 999 stone squares, and a human portrait was carved on every square. There were young and old, men and women. Is this some kind of mechanism? Press the wrong button and a terrifying restriction will be activated to kill the trespasser. Ling Han mumbled to himself. After his eyes had swept once over the portraits, he stopped at one of them, and smiled. That should be the case. Isn't this the face of Zi Shuexian? If I had not obtained the memory crystal inside the thunder battle armor, and only came here by coincidence, then I would have only had 1,000th chance to have picked this square. Going by Zi Shuexian's personality, she would definitely not give anyone a second chance. There must be a restriction here that would kill off any trespassers. The walls of this cave have been completely refined by her, probably for the purpose of killing trespassers so that the secret is not leaked. With a flick of his finger, he shot out a stream of energy that knocked onto that portrait of Zi Shuexian. Instantly, a Ka sound was heard from the stone wall, and it began to move, slowly splitting into two. It moved slowly at first, gradually gaining speed, and it was very quickly completely open, revealing a stone chamber. It was not very big. Its width was only about 10 feet, and only about 20 feet deep. The contents were even more simple. There was only a table, and a book lay on it. Ling Han walked inside, Hu Nyo naturally followed closely behind. Rabbit, on the other hand, followed in as well after some hesitation. The stone wall quickly fused together again, and closed them inside the stone chamber. However, though it was completely sealed inside, it was not dark. The walls all around them shone with a soft light as if they were made of beautiful jade. Ling Han walked to the long table, then sat down, and flipped open the book. This was what Zi Shuexian had left behind. There was no ultimate treasure, and for a grand and mighty shattering void tier cultivator, this was extremely unpresentable. Linghan began reading. Suddenly, his brow wrinkled into a frown before an enraged expression appeared on his face and his killing intent spiked. After he had finished reading the book, he slammed his hand heavily onto the table, almost flipping it over. "Let Lord Rabbit see." Rabbit snatched the book, and immediately began to read. Soon, it, too, looked astonished. There was no way it could not be astonished. If what Zi Shuexian had written was true, then everyone in this whole world was living in a gigantic lie. Linghan sorted out his emotions. What she had said was, about a few millennia ago, there were certain parties in the realm of immortals that suddenly became interested in the lower realm. Not only were they interested in the various resources available in the lower realm, but their interest also extended to the living beings of this lower realm. This was an extremely horrifying thing. These few parties of the realm of immortals had obtained an ancient formula that could refine all the living creatures of an entire realm to concoct an immortal-grade pill. It would possess all the resources of the realm, as well as the restrictions of the entire realm. Even in the realm of immortals, this would be considered an extremely valuable, treasured medicine. However, it was a taboo in the realm of immortals, and was definitely not allowed to be concocted. Nonetheless, it was a different case for the lower realm. These few parties of the realm of immortals easily took control of this whole plane, and their representatives were the 5 ancient great sect. Why was it that every time that a massive catastrophe happened, the 5 great sects would somehow manage to solve the crisis at the end? That was because they were part of the whole scheme themselves. Furthermore, it was nothing like solving any crisis, but rather dealing with the aftermath. These parties of the realm of immortal realm laid out their plans for the duration of 10,000 years, and like they were raising beasts for slaughter, they used these 10,000 years' time for the lower realm to recover and regain vitality. This time also allowed a prosperous era to dawn in the greater environment as various geniuses and elites appeared in quick succession. Great numbers of natural treasures appeared as well. This was the accumulation of 10,000 years that would lead to a great explosion, and all this was the purpose of helping the realm of immortals to concoct the realm pill. A pill concocted from the living creatures of an entire realm, its effects were naturally outstanding. Zi Shuexian was an outstanding disciple of the Blue Thunder sect, as well as the descendant of some powerful race of the realm of immortals. After she found out the truth, she was greatly angered. On one side, she left behind all the truth that she had uncovered, and on the other, she began to fight back against those reapers from the realm of immortals. Linghan had witnessed the results. There were too many elites from the realm of immortals, and 3 of them joining forces were enough to suppress her. And the establishment of the Restore Heaven Academy was a conspiracy too. Its purpose was indeed to pick out the greatest prodigies of the generation, but it was not to leave behind any sparks for the future. Instead, they would be brought into the realm of immortals, and after they had been brainwashed, they would become the vassals of those parties. In simpler words, they would become lackeys. They were geniuses, after all, so they would be able to become very useful lackeys. Furthermore, high-level alchemists, or alchemists that were outstandingly skilled would also be brought into the realm of immortals, where they would be taught the alchemy skills for immortal-grade pill concoction, but it was naturally not for the purpose of nurturing them. Instead, they were merely thought of as pure tools for the concoction of alchemical pills. By that time, aside from those that had a certain background in the realm of immortals like Rabbit, all other human beings and living creatures would be exterminated, whether they were human or demonic beast, plants, or even stone spirits, fire spirits or water spirits. After the realm pill had been concocted, the whole lower realm would become lifeless as practically all living creatures had died off completely. These parties from the realm of immortals were the real headquarters of the Heaven's Sword sect and the Absolute Saber sect, and they were called the Heaven's Sword Palace and Ultimate Saber Palace Hall. They were very powerful parties of the realm of immortals, and it wasn't that their actions were unknown to everyone in the realm of immortals, but that those that knew were wary of their power. Furthermore, their actions only harmed the ants of the lower realm, so everyone merely turned a blind eye to it. Moreover, those creatures that had backgrounds like Rabbit would be spared, so those elders that had long since ascended to the realm of immortals would not make a big fuss about it, either. In conclusion, The Heaven's Sword Palace and the other powerful parties proceeded very successfully in this matter. In total, they had concocted the realm pill a few dozen times, and had used it to nurture a great number of elites, so they were already at the level of outstanding power in the realm of immortals. If Ling Han had not had his physical body shattered by the Black Tower in his last life, he would have had only two choices. The first was that he would be brought to the realm of immortals, and with his talent in alchemy, he would definitely be nurtured, and perhaps might even marry a woman from the realm of immortals as his wife. But in the end, he would not be able to escape the fate of being a servant. Otherwise, if he fought with his life, with his limited power against their superior might, his fate would ultimately be death. It was precisely because of this that the 5 great sects hated the Thousand Corpse sect so much. That was because the Thousand Corpse sect wanted to turn all living beings into their corpse soldiers, and if they did, how would they be able to concoct the realm pill? There would not be enough main ingredients left. Previously, Ling Han had wondered if the realm of immortals really wanted to invade the mortal realm. How had the 5 great sects been able to fight back, and actually managed to force the invaders from the realm of immortals to return whence they came? However, the truth was that they were all in it together. After the realm pill had been concocted, the Heaven's Sword Palace would leave behind some seeds, and allow 10,000 years' time for the lower realm to slowly recover its vitality as they waited for the next harvest. The Heaven's Sword sect and the other great sects were responsible for standing by and leading the world of martial arts. Otherwise, 10,000 years could have passed, and the overall level of martial arts in the lower realm might only have recovered to the level of the spiritual ocean and the spiritual pedestal tier. In that case, the realm pill concocted would not be as effective. And the current 10,000 years' time was almost up. The Reapers from the realm of immortals would enter into lower realm, join forces with the Heaven's Sword sect and the other great sects, and concoct the new realm pill with the whole mortal realm as their furnace, and all living creatures in this world would be their ingredients. Damn them, they are all bastards. Rabbit flew into a thundering rage. Chapter 651, Breaking Through in Rage. Chapter 651, Breaking Through in Rage. Ling Han was also in a thundering rage, and a vein throbbed dangerously on his forehead, while killing intent that seemed capable of turning the heavens into flames churned inside him. How despicable! They actually treated all the living things of an entire realm as if they were ingredients to be refined. How deranged was that? Could it be that the 5 immortal sects were really demonic beasts in disguise? But even if they were demonic beasts, human beings were not the only ones in the lower realm. On this land, there were his friends and family, but a great catastrophe could possibly befall them in the near future. This caused his killing intent to spike sky high. If the heavens are unjust, then I shall destroy the heavens. This thought came to being in Ling Han's heart. Wang, his whole body trembled, and he entered into a strange state. There was sword intent surging around his whole body as if he himself had become a sword, showing off his ability. Fuck, this brat is too excited, he's about to understand Tao. Rabbit exclaimed in shock. It was also filled with envy as well. People always said that it was easy to understand Tao in an extremely emotional state, but that was only true for geniuses. Otherwise, if your aptitude was not high enough, it would be a waste no matter how excited you became. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Ling Han's fingers moved unconsciously, and multiple flashes of sword qi danced. This was a sealed room, and it was not a big one, either. As the flashes of sword qi danced, they instantly filled the whole stone chamber. Ioyo, do you want to shoot your Lord Rabbit to death? Rabbit hurriedly scrambled away. However, there was sword qi everywhere in here, so it could only circulate origin power and form a shield to take these flashes of sword qi head-on. Still, Ling Han's battle prowess was really too terrifying. Even if these flashes of sword qi had merely been flicked out by his fingers, their destructive power was shocking, causing it to yowl loudly as a result. Thankfully, it was a monster in its own right, and that hide of his was something that not even Hunyo could bite through, so taking a few flashes of sword qi from Ling Han was still all right, though the resulting pain was still inevitable. Hunyo, meanwhile, giggled daintily, and danced easily around the sword qi. Her body flipped and twisted, and could even change shape in an inconceivable way. She would instantly flash to a different spot, which looked very bizarre. Rabbit could not help but stare with wide eyes, and mumbled, "Major accomplishment in body of lightning? How shocking, she can actually transform into lightning and freely change her body, and even flash like lightning and shrink space to form a kind of short-distance teleportation. If this girl really has an ancestor in the realm of immortals, what kind of level would he be? The king of immortals?" Ling Han entered into an unconscious state. In the depths of anger, it actually allowed him to obtain a breakthrough. The great door to 30 flashes of sword chi was slowly opening in front of him. He had stayed on the level of 29 flashes of sword chi for a very long time. This was a genuine barrier, and since long ago, it has been thought to be the maximum number of flashes of chi. Naturally, it was incredibly difficult to breach this barrier. Even if he was an especially gifted genius, he had still been jammed in by this barrier. But after so many days, he had already obtained a vague comprehension, and it seemed as if there was only a paper window blocking his way forwards. Yet he always seemed to be just that bit away from success. It wasn't until this moment that, in the throes of rage, he managed to burst through that paper window. Wang, wang, wang. Ling Han's whole body instead of merely his fingers was exuding sword chi. 30 flashes of sword chi really was the limit. This was a transformation. His succeeded. Rabbit exclaimed in shock. This brat was a freak too. Comprehending chi actually seemed to be as easy as drinking water to him. Although comprehension of chi was not that amazing, and merely a very small hill on the path of martial arts, and there were more and higher mountains that had to be overcome, it was enough to see how much of a monster Ling Han was. Ling Han suddenly opened his eyes, and looked faintly pleased. He had never thought that he would be able to reach 30 flashes of chi under such conditions. Now, he could finally form Ray, and no longer needed to battle with Pseudo-Ray. His battle prowess would naturally experience another upgrade yet again. However, the pleasant surprise could not erase his fury. The 5 great sects were really demented. They obviously treated the whole world as farm animals to raise for slaughter, yet through these 10,000 years, they put out an image that said, "I am your savior," and had everyone in the world revere their presence. No wonder the Thunder Empress said that they had all been living in a colossal lie. After the destruction of the world, someone would definitely have left behind the truth of the matter, but the 5 great sects had 10,000 years to brainwash the people and destroy all evidence of their crimes. As a result, they still remained seated high on the pedestal. No wonder the 5 great sects guarded ancient maps so closely. They were afraid that some clues might have been left behind on the ancient maps that would reveal the secrets of 10,000 years ago, or even 20, 50, 100,000 years ago, the shady business that they had been doing all this while. Ling Han's emotions stabilized. Emotions could not solve the problem. Instead, letting his emotions affect his decisions could bring him ruin. For example, if he now loudly announced the real faces of the 5 great sects, how many would actually believe his words? Aren't you just simply smearing the good names of the 5 ancient great sects? Slandering the great people who have done such outstanding service 10,000 years ago? Such a thing should be punishable by death. No wonder the small Saber King was so indifferent to life. That was because, in his eyes, all living things were merely the dregs of concoction later, so what would the deaths of a few harm? I swear that I not only will flatten the 5 great sects here, but I will also charge up into the realm of immortals in the future, and those so-called 5 great immortal sects will not be able to escape the fate of being eliminated, either. Ling Han exclaimed, gripping his fists. Brat, Lord Rabbit will support you in spirit. Rabbit said very undependably. Ling Han, Nyo supports you. Beat everyone down, and you become emperor, and Nyo becomes empress. Who Nyo, on the other hand, was very loyal, and had no idea what the word embarrassed actually meant. Ling Han laughed loudly, but when Hu Nyo mentioned emperor and empress, his heart moved. Zi Shuexian not only left behind the truth, but also mentioned how to solve the current dilemma. That was simple: split open the skies, bring the whole lower realm and soar into the realm of immortals so that the whole lower realm would become a part of the realm of immortals. The realm of immortals had its own regulations, and the 5 great immortal sects would definitely not harm the citizens of the realm of immortals. Otherwise, they would really be overthrown and suppressed by the whole realm of immortals. Even if the 5 great immortal sects were very powerful, they would definitely not be able to stand against that. Splitting open the skies, easier said than done. Feng Po Yun said that shattering the empty void and becoming immortal was a very dangerous thing to do. Now that was because the 5 great immortal sects had sealed the path to become immortal for this lower realm, and have laid out a deadly array that could kill any shattering void tier cultivator. In this realm, shattering void tier was the strongest. Even when immortals descended into the lower realm, they would be suppressed and restricted by the Tao of the world, but the moment one left here, then shattering void tier cultivators would still be shattering void tier cultivators, whereas immortals would have recovered their status as immortals. It was as easy as turning over one's hand for immortals to kill shattering void tier cultivators. Thus, only the members of the 5 great sects could shatter the empty void and enter into the realm of immortals, but if any other person made the attempt, they would only be seeking their own death. However, now was also the best time. Because the development of the lower realm had been changed by the 5 great immortal sects, practically all the accumulation that had gone on for these 10,000 years would be released in this short period of a few hundred years. This would allow them to maximize the effects of the realm pill that they would concoct, and for the cultivators in this realm, that was also a fated opportunity that would allow them to grow extremely fast. If not, how would there have been so many geniuses? Ling Han could not help but think, what about those 4 disciples of his? If they, too, had become immortals, had they then sold off their pride as well? Ling Han's expression darkened. In future, if he could manage to meet Jiang Yufeng and the others, he would definitely ask them clearly. Otherwise, he would definitely act on the rules of their school, and root out any disciples with bad moral character. Now, the problem had come back to the matter of splitting open the skies. Splitting open the skies definitely had to be done through the form of a country. That was because an individual had limited power, but if one wanted to bring the whole lower realm into the realm of immortals, the power needed would exceed even a few hundred or a few thousand shattering void tier cultivators. As a result, one could only borrow the power of the nation to be able to pierce through the 9 skies and enter into the realm of immortals, transforming the whole lower realm into a part of the realm of immortals, wherein everyone had the hope of becoming an immortal. Yi, Ma Juo Bao. Ling Han suddenly remembered, Ma Juo Bao had mentioned to him a few times the notion of splitting open the skies, and pointed directly at the realm of immortals as their greatest enemy. Could it be that he had long since known the truth of the matter? If not, why would he have established the Purple Moon Empire? Chapter 652, Plans. Chapter 652, Plans. I have to go see Ma Juo Bao, Ling Han declared. Actually, this so-called truth was only Zi Shuexian's side of the story, but Ling Han had seen the memory crystal that she had left behind. Additionally, it could logically clear up all the doubts he had had in his mind for all this while, which made him choose to believe that it was the truth without any hesitation. Splitting open the skies is the only way, but first, we have to establish a country, Ling Han thought, and could not help but smile bitterly. He was a man that enjoyed being free, and to be an emperor was really too much torment for him. For the sake of my parents, my friend, Xian and the others, no matter what, I have to do it. Ling Han soon found his resolution. However, if I rashly establish my own country, that would only attract full suppression from the 5 great sects. Even if I have the Black Tower, I cannot possibly take a whole country with all citizens inside it in an instant. In that case, how could a nation's leader that keeps running away win the hearts of his people, and be strengthened by power of the nation? Collect resources widely, and slowly become king. I can go first to the Restore Heaven Academy. That is a place that has gathered at least 90% of the geniuses of the world, and if I could gather them all by my side, then as long as my power reaches the standard, I would become capable of moving this whole world overnight. That's right, that's right. Not only are those people highly talented themselves, they are also the cream of the crop from various parties. Gaining their support would be equivalent to gaining the support of the parties standing behind them, and this would be of great benefit to establishing my own nation. Hence, the first step is that I must once again use my identity as a heaven-grade alchemist, and secondly, like a peacock stretching its tail feathers, I must keep a high profile on the path of martial arts to increase the odds in my favor. Young people, right? To gain their backing, you'd either have to give them enough benefits, or dominate them thoroughly in terms of pure power. I am capable of doing both. I can still make an attempt for some parties, but there are some parties that may or may not be the dogs of the 5 great sects. Before I reach major accomplishment level in my individual power, I definitely must not mention the matter about establishing my own nation. Neither can I reveal the evil plans of the 5 great sects. I can only allow those that I trust absolutely to participate in this matter. The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing are fine. Big Brother Feng is fine too. I hope Big Brother Feng would not be too hot-tempered. Though he is an ultimate elite of the Shattering Void tier, he is, after all, only in the 2nd layer of the tier. If he were really to stand alone against the might of the 5 great sects, the results would be unthinkable. The 5 great sects, lasting for dozens of millennia, have never experienced a lapse in their inheritance. Having hold of all the resources in this land, who knows what kind of power they possess? It may even be possible that for insurance, the 5 sects of the realm of immortals have secretly placed a few immortals here. If they encounter a Shattering Void tier cultivator that is too strong, they would directly regain their cultivation as immortals and kill him off immediately, just like what they had done to Zi Shuexian years ago. I have to be very cautious. Before we split open the skies, the greatest enemy would be the 5 great sects, and I must first overthrow them, then take advantage of the interval when the 5 sects of the realm of immortals have yet to invade the lower realm to split open this sky and bring this whole land to ascend into the realm of immortals. A clear plan took form in Ling Han's mind. He formed his hands into tight fists, his whole body filled with fighting spirit. He now clearly knew who his enemy was, and whom he should aim his sword at, so his target was clear. Ling Han, it's not fun here, let's go. Hunyo hopped over, and rubbed against Ling Han dearly. Ling Han laughed loudly, and picked Hunyo up. Even if it was only for the sake of this little girl, he was willing to declare war on the whole world, and the realm of immortals. He nodded, and looked towards that stone wall from which they had entered. There was a handle on it, and now there was naturally no further need to identify Zi Shuexian's portrait to be able to open the mechanism. He stored the notebook she had left behind into the Black Tower. Ling Han was filled with admiration for this woman. For the sake of all the living beings of the world, she betrayed her own clan, and stood against the immortals, eventually dying. What an amazing woman! She should be remembered by every single person in the world. If he managed to successfully split open the skies, then the greatest credit would have to go to Zi Shuexian. Ka. The stone door slowly opened. The doors open. Grab the treasure. Instantly, a group of 7 people rushed in. And even while they were scrambling in, they continued to move against their companions, engaged in a fierce battle. But they immediately spotted Ling Han, Hunyo, and the large white rabbit inside the stone chamber. They were initially confused, stopping in their tracks. They aimed their weapons at them, obviously thinking that Ling Han had obtained the treasure inside the stone chamber. Hand over your spatial ring, and I can spare your life, a man declared coldly. He looked to be in his 30s. There was a gloom to his features, and he had a terrifying air of violence about him. Ling Han smiled slightly, raising both his hands, and asked, "What if I don't have a spatial ring?" "No matter what kind of spatial spirit tool you have to leave it behind," another spoke up. He was dressed entirely in silken robes of silk, and looked very flamboyant. "Take off all your clothes before you can leave." An old man who looked to be in his 60s, his eyes focused on Ling Han's lower body, and gaze filled with maliciousness. This old bastard, a psycho and a pervert. Ling Han's face instantly darkened. Xiao, with a leap, accompanied by flickering lightning, he appeared in front of that old man. Striking forth with a stab, without using any kind of martial arts technique, he pierced the heart of the old man. Blood spurted, and the old man looked at Ling Han in disbelief. He was in the spiritual infant tier, and this boy was only in the flower blossom tier, but the result was that he was killed with a stab that burst his heart. This was something that not even death could make him accept. Ling Han withdrew his sword. "Pa!" The old man instantly flopped lifelessly onto the ground. He smiled calmly, and asked, "Anyone else wants the treasure?" The remaining 6 people all shook their heads simultaneously. What a joke, All of them were inferior in power to the old man, but Ling Han was capable of dealing with him with a single strike, so wouldn't dealing with them mean something as simple as striking 6 more times? Though underestimating his opponent played a part in the old man's instant death, Ling Han had also acted very casually. He had not used any kind of martial arts technique, yet was able to kill him with a single strike. This was something that none of them could do. They could take risks for the sake of treasure, but if it was a matter of purely delivering themselves up to be slaughtered, then forget it. No. Hehe, we were just joking. Though natural treasures have no owner, but first come, first served is also an unofficial rule. Brother, I'll just take my leave. The 6 of them dared not stay any longer, fearing that Ling Han's murderous nature had been incited, and he would thus kill them too. After all, he had already killed one, so what would be the harm in killing a few more? Ling Han did not make any move to kill them, and allowed the 6 of them to leave freely. His mindset was now different. He had decided to make his name and reputation known as soon as possible. His reputation should at least not be inferior to the likes of Yarrow Hui Yu and Small Saber King. He, too, exited the stone chamber. Now, he had obtained the heaven cloud purple thunder, and had also found out the truth that Zi Shuexian had left behind. There was no significance in staying here any longer. Ling Han and Hunyo left, and after casually tapping a finger on Rabbit, he and Hunyo directly entered into the Black Tower. Next, he planned to merge with the heaven cloud purple thunder and completely form a body of lightning. He would then form Sword Ray and cultivate body of diamond, and make an attempt to break through to the spiritual infant tier. As for Rabbit, who cared where it wanted to go? For the moment, Ling Han had no plans to let this rabbit know the secret of the Black Tower. After embracing Zhu Xian and sharing a few intimate words with her, Ling Han began the merging process with the heavenly cloud purple thunder. Chapter 653 Minor Accomplishment in the Body of Lightning. Chapter 653 Minor Accomplishment in the Body of Lightning. Ordinarily speaking, it was impossible for Ling Han to merge with this divine thunder. This was a divine being that would soon develop into a thunder spirit, and the heavenly cloud purple thunder could definitely be considered one of the top 10 strongest powers of thunder, so no matter what, one would have to at least be in the heaven tier to be qualified to merge with it. For someone like Ling Han, a member of the young generation, if he wanted to merge with this purple thunder, then he would have to gain the assistance of an ultimate elite of the heaven tier or the shattering void tier, and have them use their great powers to disperse the aura of violence and malice of the purple thunder. Otherwise, the power of thunder would explode within his body, and no matter how much of a genius he was, he would only die a clean death. But Ling Han did not need that, because he had the Black Tower. In here, he was a god, and no matter who it was, they would have to grovel beneath his feet. Naturally, a thunder spirit would be no exception, what more when it had yet to become a thunder spirit. However, the merging process was still not as simple as Ling Han had imagined. The heavenly cloud purple thunder was too high in level. Even if Ling Han managed to recover the cultivation level of his last life, it was not an easy feat to refine it, what more with his cultivation of this lifetime. With the Black Tower, Ling Han merely possessed the ability to refine the purple thunder, but that did not mean it could be easily done. Ling Han did not feel rushed, either. There were still about 4 months before the day that the Restore Heaven Academy would enroll new disciples, so he still had plenty of time. He decided to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat in this round of enrollment, and become the idol of this generation, the summit. This way, when he waved out an arm to beckon them in future, there naturally would be countless numbers willing to follow his lead. The effects of an idol could not be underestimated. For example, with how Wang Yiyun established the Striking Heaven Alliance, wasn't it because she had the support of the well-known Lang Yatian? Of course, Wang Yiyun's own charm was not to be overlooked, either, but regarding this, if Ling Han was willing, he, too, could have Zhu Xian play the part of ambassador. The North regions know, with the greatest beauty in the whole world as the face of his party, who would not impatiently come. The power of thunder spread out within Ling Han's body, continuously remolding his body, and changing every bit of blood and flesh in his body into lightning. This was very interesting. He had cultivated the body of iron sheet, so his physique was on par with precious metal of the same level, but if his body were to transform into lightning, he would become an untouchable existence. An ancient legend streaked through his mind. This was something he had heard of in his last life. Someone who was about to cultivate a body of lightning, or something along the likes of a body of flames, or a body of ice, was referred to as spirit body. The biggest characteristic of spirit body was that the possessor could ignore physical bodies. Even if someone's power was 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times stronger than that of another person, with the latter's body being capable of transforming into pure lightning, or pure flames, they had no physical body, so how would one be capable of causing them injury? Then wouldn't that mean being invincible? No, pure power could not injure him, but chi was capable of it. Sword chi, saber chi, staff chi, as long as it was chi, it was capable of injuring a spirit body, but how much damage could be caused would depend on the power gap between the two parties. It was possible that no damage would be done at all, or it was possible that a heavy injury could be inflicted, possibly even a mortal wound. No matter when, power was might. This was also why those who had cultivated chi could be termed as rulers. That was because that was the only means to injure a spirit body. Of course, since chi could do it, there was no further need to speak of Ray. Body of Iron Sheet, meanwhile, was completely different. This was an upgrade of one's physique, so who cared whether you had cultivated sword chi or not? He could simply take it head on. There was no need for empty words, as he would be using his might to speak for himself. A physique on par with precious metal of the same level, there was no way that normal sword chi could inflict any injury upon it. From the defense angle, Body of Iron Sheet and Body of Diamond are naturally more awesome. After all, that is something that the indestructible Heaven Scroll has brought out from the Black Tower, Ling Han thought, but there was nothing bad about having a body of lightning. At least, it could increase his speed by a few times. Aside from that, it could allow him to make his powerful, tough physique into the last trump card up his sleeve. Others would imagine that they would only have to get through his defenses, but who would have thought they could not do anything to him at all, and would allow him a good opportunity to deal them a killing blow in counterattack. Naturally, the more trump cards I have, the better. The unexpected thing was that not only did the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven absorb the power of thunder, so did the indestructible Heaven Scroll. It automatically began to circulate, and started to compete with the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven. More importantly, the indestructible Heaven Scroll was much more awesome, so the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven, like a little daughter-in-law that had been wronged, could only get a little bit after the indestructible Heaven Scroll had swallowed multiple huge mouthfuls. Fuck, what I want now is to form a body of lightning. Why do you have to fuck asterisk snatch stuff now? Body of Diamond can completely be formed with the use of other natural treasures. Don't waste the power of thunder. Ling Han hurriedly took the initiative to suppress the indestructible Heaven Scroll, not allowing it to continue circulating. Finally, the Thunderclap Ninth Heaven managed to transform from a little daughter-in-law into a mother-in-law, and began to greedily absorb the power of thunder, which abruptly increased the rate at which Ling Han transformed into lightning. Time passed quietly. Ling Han could not tell the difference between night and day, and placed his complete focus on transforming into purple thunder. He now had reached the peak of the flower blossom tier, and had also polished his cultivation on this level to its maximum capacity, and there was no further space for improvement. Thus, there was naturally no further need to cultivate. No matter how much he cultivated, he would not get any further benefits. Thankfully, the space inside the Black Tower was unusually massive, and uncountable flowers, herbs, and trees had been grown here. There were also various wild beasts and demonic beasts, so Zhu Xian'er and Hu Niu would not be too lonely as they spent their days feasting and drinking. Furthermore, after Zhu Xian'er had crossed the boundary to the flower blossom tier, her cultivation also began to spike sharply. She had originally been one of the strongest geniuses of the North region, and was inferior in no way to the likes of Wen Yi Jian or Mu Rongqing. Now, with the support of an endless supply of resources, her cultivation rate naturally sped up. Moreover, there had always been an unyielding spirit inside her. Every time they encountered danger, she would have to first duck inside the Black Tower, but Hu Niu was able to bear the risks alongside Ling Han. The main reason was because her power was not strong enough, and she could only become a burden to Ling Han. She wanted to become stronger. Geniuses were not scary. What was scary was someone who was obviously a genius, but was still willing to put real effort into her cultivation. That really was someone that ordinary people could only look up to. 1 month, 2 months. Ling Han finally cultivated the thunderclap ninth heaven to minor accomplishment level, and could completely transform his whole body into lightning. With this coordinating with his thunderclap ninth heaven, his speed could be displayed to its maximum capacity. At the same time, when he attacked, the power of lightning would accompany his attacks. This was the heaven cloud purple thunder, and the power of lightning it possessed could even pose a threat to the heaven tier elites. If it was not for the fact that this was the critical moment for its metamorphosis into a thunder spirit, how could it be possible that Ling Han could so easily capture it? Luck was also a part of strength. Ling Han did not stand up, because there was still 1/3 of the power of lightning left. Naturally, he could not allow it to be wasted. Thus, he did not suppress the indestructible heaven scroll any longer, and allowed this cultivation technique to once again begin absorbing the power of lightning. The thunderclap ninth heaven was still circulating. Forming a body of lighting was not the end, for he could still continue to endlessly absorb the power of lightning. Just like how a cultivator could accumulate origin power, lightning could naturally also be accumulated as well to increase its might. The quality of the heaven cloud purple thunder was really too high. Ling Han felt that there was some shocking change taking place within his body. There would be occasional flickers of golden light all over his body, yet it was still short of the last step, and unable to cross the threshold. Body of diamond was really too difficult to cultivate. It was even tougher than precious metal of the same level. It could be increased by another level at least. Like how Ling Han was in the flower blossom tier, then the body of diamond he formed would have the toughness of level 7 precious metal. Even if he lay down and slept, whatever spiritual infant tier cultivator attacking him with full power would not possibly injure him. What more when the body of diamond could allow a detached limb to regrow, and he would only need to use the indestructible true fluid in exchange. Now, he possessed 6 drops of indestructible true fluid, and once he formed the body of diamond, he could increase the maximum limit to 10 drop. Charge. Ling Han absorbed the power of lightning like mad, and began to condense sword ray. In the instant that he formed body of diamond and condensed sword ray, he would break through to the spiritual infant tier and truly obtain a change in quality. Chapter 654, Breaking Through to the Spiritual Infant Tier. Chapter 654, Breaking Through to the Spiritual Infant Tier. Henyi. All of a sudden, another month had flown by. The main reason was because the heaven cloud purple thunder was really too difficult to refine. Altogether, Ling Han had spent a total of 3 months' time to completely refine it. He'd used most of it to cultivate a body of lightning, and the remaining 1/3 was used to further improve Ling Han's physique towards the level of body of diamond. But when the heaven cloud purple thunder was completely refined, Ling Han was still a step away from the body of diamond. He took out the spiritual fluid and gulped it down like mad while also summoning the heaven transformation bowl, harvesting the various spirit herbs inside the black tower and purifying them. This spiritual fluid originated from the 12 heaven mystery realms, and could be considered a divine fluid. It had to be diluted first before it could be absorbed, but to form the body of diamond, Ling Han merely diluted it to 1/10 of its original concentration now and began to gulp it down. Immediately, violent energy scrambled around within his body as if it had become a tsunami that wanted to crush it entirely. Ling Han hurriedly began circulating the indestructible heaven scroll to absorb this energy, and proceeded to do the final charge. Invigorating and agonizing. He felt it was invigorating was because his body had gained the support of an ocean's worth of energy, and was another step closer to becoming the body of diamond. This kind of upgrade of one's life source was naturally very invigorating, but what was agonizing was the fact that this energy was really too violent. Its rampage caused the skin all over his body to shatter, and even the bones inside his body were making chong sounds as if they were about to break. At this time, Ling Han could not circulate the thunderclap ninth heaven and turn into a body of lightning to avoid harm. Also, he could not cultivate the body of diamond, he could only grit his teeth and bear it. He was pained and overjoyed at the same time, experiencing both ice and fire. Ling Han can't help but suck on his teeth, moaning. Previously, His whole body had been numbed by the heaven cloud purple thunder, and now it was nearly torn by this raging energy. The road of martial arts was really difficult. It was no wonder few people could walk this road to its end. There were some things that merely declaring your determination was enough. It was easy to think, but to stick to your decision was a difficult thing. But the body of diamond was in the process of being cultivated. If it could be completed by walking a full 100 steps, then Ling Han was in the situation in which he had already taken 97 steps, and was only a breath away from the finish line. By this time, even if Ling Han's arms, legs, and all the other bones in his body broke, he would still grit his teeth and bear the agony. 98 steps. 99 steps. 100 steps. Ling Han's body exuded an infinite expanse of golden light. He looked to have completely transformed into a golden war god, glowing with impressive divine might, standing up high. The body of diamond. At the same time, there was a flash of sword ray at his fingertips, which twined around 30 flashes of sword chi. It was currently in the process of changing from tightly entwined to merging together, becoming a genuine single existence. A real sword ray. Ling Han persisted, and began to break through to the spiritual infant tier. In comparison, it was much easier to reach the spiritual infant tier because he had already taken this step in his last life, but whether it was the body of diamond or sword ray, neither was something that he had come into contact with in his last life. Then that would be easy. After merely about half a day's time, the 10 divine flowers began growing like mad, and on the earth spiritual pedestals, the 5 divine flowers had pierced through the skies, whereas on the sky spiritual pedestal, the 5 divine flowers poured down like a waterfall from the sky. The 10 divine flowers actually entwined around one another, and bore a massive divine fruit. And the spiritual infant was nurtured within the fruit. Ling Han beckoned, and spiritual fluid, spiritual fruits, as well as alchemical pills were all swallowed into his mouth and transformed into the most primary energy, helping him to break through to the spiritual infant tier. Most importantly, he had now formed the body of diamond, and with the rise of his cultivation level, his body of diamond would also be improved to another level. The amount of energy needed for that would be incredibly terrifying. Thankfully, he had already formed the body of diamond. This was a mere improvement, and in comparison, was much easier to do. The divine fruit trembled slightly, and one could clearly see that there was wave-like movement inside. At first, the skin of the fruit was gold, but now it was gradually becoming more and more translucent. One could clearly see that there was actually a tiny human figure nurtured inside, and this human figure looked exactly the same like Ling Han. This was the spiritual infant, and could be considered as a second divine sense of cultivators. In legends, after cultivators became immortals, the spiritual infant could even leave their bodies and travel all around the world. And if the divine sense of the cultivator was destroyed, the spiritual infant was also capable of replacing their divine sense, giving the cultivator a second life. In short, in the subsequent cultivation process, the spiritual infant was to be the priority, and everything would have to be planned with the spiritual infant as the center. Ling Han opened his mouth and sucked in great amounts of spiritual medicine like a great whale to birth the spiritual infant as soon as possible. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Ling Han had originally thought that as he had already passed this point once before, it should have been very fast for him to break through to the spiritual infant tier. But he had not expected that his spiritual infant would be born from 10 divine flowers altogether this time. If he wanted to transform them into a womb, there was a need for horrifyingly great amounts of energy. But, at the same time, the spiritual infant born from this would naturally be stronger than before. Ling Han began to throw the sword ray, the body of diamond, and body of lightning onto the spiritual infant. Although it was mere legend, but what if the spiritual infant was really capable of leaving his body in future? In that case, he wanted to have his spiritual infant possess the strongest power possible. He imprinted his martial intent on the divine fruit. This was something of his own. It was completely like a piece of blank paper, on which he could freely write whatever he wanted. Very quickly, innumerable patterns appeared on the surface of the divine fruit. Ling Han emblazoned all that he had learnt on it. From a certain aspect, this was a second him. Anyways, if there was one day he lost his memory, he would be able to regain his own martial Tao from his own spiritual infant. Of course, that was only the Tao of martial arts. It was impossible to brand his personality and experiences on it, or at least it was impossible now. Another 7 days later, the divine fruit was covered completely in patterns, and exuded an ancient, primordial air. The indestructible heaven scroll, especially, occupied 99% of the space, as if it was a monarch that had arrived. Whether it was the 3 great mystical powers, or the 3 styles of black origin, they were all suppressed completely. From this, one could clearly see how high the indestructible heaven scroll was. Even the combined force of the 3 great mystical powers was not on the same level as a single % of it. Ka. Cracks appeared on the divine fruit, and the spiritual infant was about to come into being. Boom! Ling Han merely felt a tremble pass over his entire body, and the aura of his body instantly soared. The spiritual infant tear. In his dantian, the spiritual infant had burst out of the divine fruit, and transformed into a tiny human figure that floated between the 2 spiritual oceans. Its eyes were in the process of opening, and a brilliant golden light shone from it as if it was a god of war. Ling Han flicked lightly with his finger, and his spiritual infant too flicked its finger. Hong, a flash of sword ray shot out, and the spiritual chi around them instantly compounded this attack, increasing the power of this strike by 100-fold. After entering the spiritual infant tier, it was no longer the divine flowers that would be stimulating the spiritual chi in the surroundings to compound one's battle prowess, but the spiritual infant. And Ling Han's spiritual infant was one that had been merged from 10 divine flowers, so its might was definitely not calculated by a simple addition. The first layer of the spiritual infant tier, but it is definitely no problem to battle a cultivator with 7 stars of the deity transformation tier. Ling Han smiled. This was extremely inconceivable. One had to know that the higher the cultivation level, the more difficult it would be to fight an opponent stronger than oneself. In his last life, the Sword Emperor and the others were also capable of fighting an opponent about 10 stars superior to themselves in Heaven tier. And though Ling Han had yet to return to the Heaven tier, and was merely in the spiritual infant tier now, his battle prowess could allow him to fight an opponent about 30 stars superior to himself. The mere thought of this would cause anyone's hair to stand on ends. Of course, this was in the situation wherein he fully maximized his battle prowess, such as using the 3 great mystical powers, or using 2 mystical powers along with the 3 styles of black origin. But even if he did not use his mystical powers or the 3 styles of black origin, but merely Sword Ray along with his basic battle prowess, it would be no issue to battle an opponent at 20 stars of the spiritual infant tier. Ling Han's opponents were no longer those prodigies of the same level, only those superior to him by a whole cultivation tier would be qualified to compete with him. Hong, the Black Tower suddenly shook as well, and multiple great lakes suddenly appeared. In the sky, there were also waterfalls pouring down, which made for an inconceivable sight. You've broken through to the spiritual infant tier, and the 2nd floor of the Black Tower is now open. Small tower appeared. Chapter 655, the 2nd floor of the Black Tower. Chapter 655, the 2nd floor of the Black Tower. Henyi. The 2nd floor of the Black Tower is open? Instantly, Ling Han felt greatly surprised and overwhelmed with curiosity, and said, "Quick, lead the way. Haven't you already seen it before?" Small Tower asked calmly. A muscle twitched in Ling Han's jaw, and he said, "Are you playing around with me? Didn't you say that there are a total of 9 floors, and every floor has a treasure? You didn't embezzle it, did you?" TSK. Small Tower felt absolutely nothing about this kind of joke, and with a mere snort, it said, "There are indeed 9 floors in the Black Tower, but the power that seals off each floor is different. The rise of your cultivation until a certain level would mean that the power of one floor would be released. This would make the Black Tower become more powerful, and have more uses as well." Ling Han rolled his eyes, and asked, "Why didn't you tell me that sooner?" "I only awakened the memories regarding it after the 2nd floor opened," Small Tower said calmly. Ling Han gazed at it in suspicion, and asked, "And you call that amnesia?" "You can say whatever you like," Small Tower retorted shamelessly. "Fine, I'm scared of you. Ling Han sighed. Then tell me, what kind of benefits does the second floor bring me? Small Tower replied, according to what I know now, the first 8 layers of the Black Tower have respectively sealed off the powers of the 5 elements, lightning, space, and time, and with the opening of every floor, the Black Tower would possess the corresponding power sealed within that floor. Why don't I feel anything? Ling Han was a little displeased. He had long felt great anticipation about the second floor of the Black Tower. The first floor would be the essence of earth, Small Tower said calmly. Why do you think that the spirit herbs in this place could grow so rapidly that 1 year's time would be comparable to 1,000 years outside? It was only at this point that Ling Han was moved. The first floor had unsealed the power of earth, which was also the essence of earth, allowing him to endlessly retrieve and harvest spiritual medicine. This effect was extremely powerful. He asked, then the second floor has unsealed the power of water? He looked at the waterfall in the skies, as well as the multiple great lakes that had appeared out of nowhere. That's right, the second floor is the essence of water. Small Tower nodded. What's the benefit? Ling Han asked. You're really such a profiteer, can't you ask a more noble question? Small Tower mocked. I'm sorry for that. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Aren't you a damn spirit tool? Can you not act so human? Small Tower remained calm, and said plainly, water, the source of all life. With the installation of the power of water, first of all, the growth rate of all spirit herbs would be even faster, and they would also grow faster than before. This effect was not bad. Ling Han nodded, and asked, what else? Can't you ask some noble questions? Small Tower began to mock him again. Ling Han rolled his eyes, and said, would you believe me if I say that when I can summon the whole Black Tower out, I will toss it into the toilet and let it be for 3 whole days and nights? Small Tower was struck speechless as if it had gotten a scare. After a while, it said, additionally, the essence of water interacting with the essence of earth will allow the birth of some divine herbs, such as the lotus flower of Buddha. Ling Han's heart shook. Lotus flower of Buddha. He had seen this name in an ancient historical site before. It was a true divine herb, and even in the immortal realm, belonged to the top tier of spirit herbs. The lotus flower of Buddha should be one of the lowest quality divine herbs. As the essence of water and essence of earth interact for a longer period, the greater value the divine herbs that come to be will be, but the time would be very, very, very long, Small Tower said. This guy had to deliberately keep him in suspense. And indeed, Small Tower continued, on the 3rd floor, the essence of metal will supply you with precious metals. On the 4th floor, the essence of fire can be used to refine your immortal body. The 3rd layer of the indestructible heaven scroll that you want to cultivate must be refined through the essence of fire. Fuck. On the 5th floor, the essence of wood can once again increase the rate of growth of spirit herbs inside the Black Tower, and only with the 3 essences of water, earth, and wood interacting with one another would unprecedented immortal herbs grow. On the 6th floor, the essence of lightning is meant to refine, and only with it would some unique quality immortal herbs grow. On the 7th floor, the essence of space. Only by that time can you be considered to have real ownership of the Black Tower. You may summon it out as you like to assist you in battle, and only then would you truly know how strong the Black Tower is. On the 8th floor, the essence of time. This is a taboo power of the world, and even I don't know the exact details about it. On the 9th floor. When he saw Small Tower pause, Ling Han could not help but ask, what about the 9th floor? I don't know, either, Small Tower said expressionlessly. Fuck. Forget it. I had best avoid speaking to you too much in future as I can be driven to death by fury, Ling Han said with a sigh. However, it was good news that the 2nd floor of the Black Tower was open, and now possessed the essence of water. He would obtain genuine divine herbs. He counted the time, and the enrollment test for the Restore Heaven Academy was soon to begin. He had to make his way there quickly. Ling Han. He called Zhu Xian and Hu Niu over. Hu Niu immediately glued herself into his arms, and appeared to be very unhappy. Ling Han had not played with her again for a few months. Meanwhile, Zhu Xian looked at him tenderly, her gaze incredibly moving. Ling Han nodded, and said, let's go. They exited the Black Tower, and headed towards Nine Dragons Mountain. Not long after, Rabbit found them, and naturally gave Ling Han a scolding. This brat actually disappeared for a few months without any sign or clue, causing Lord Rabbit to look for him very hard. Was he planning to renege on the 2 stalks of dragon blood tyrant ginseng? 3 days later, they returned to Nine Dragons Mountain. At this time, the basic conditions for enrolling into the Restore Heaven Academy had been announced, and those who did not satisfy these conditions needed not participate in the upcoming test as they would not be qualified to enroll at all. If one wanted to obtain the qualification to take the test, they had to fulfill one of the following 2 conditions: reaching the flower blossom tier before being 40 years old, or breaking through to the spiritual infant tier before being 70 years old. As for those in the deity transformation tier, there was not much in terms of requirements, because even in the adult generation, there did not seem to have been any rumors of a genius in the deity transformation tier appearing. Another 2 days later, the test would officially begin. The test was divided into 2 parts. The first part appeared to be very simple, and that was to walk out of the zone that had been set up by the Restore Heaven Academy in a specific time limit. As long as one could walk out, then they would be qualified to become a disciple of the Restore Heaven Academy. The second part, meanwhile, was a stone-snatching battle. In another area, the Restore Heaven Academy would bury a great number of strange stones. They could not be stored into spatial rings, and could only be kept on one's person. These stones would shine, and this light was not something that could be hidden with mere clothing upon close distance. In a specific time frame, the few that could snatch the most stones would become those disciples that the Academy would nurture with priority. They would be on the same level as those prodigies who had obtained the invitation to directly enroll into the Academy, such as the Small Saber King and Yarrow Hui Yu. Ling Han found the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing, and after considering for a long time, drew the both of them into the Black Tower before telling them of the message that Zi Shuexian had left behind. He had not spoken of it outside, because he feared that the sky had ears. This was something that Ma Duo Bao had said, and they had to be very careful. Ling Han did not know what kind of powers immortals possessed. Nor did he know what moves the 5 immortal sects had laid in place in this realm. Perhaps they were capable of eavesdropping on a certain area, and incite a reaction when such sensitive phrases like split open the skies were heard. Thus, safety first. Chapter 656, Acting Separately. Chapter 656, Acting Separately. Henyi. Both the Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing paled in shock before flying into thunderous rage. This news was really too subversive, it could even be considered treasonous, actually daring to rebuke the 5 ancient great sects that sat upon the high pedestal. But, on the one hand, Ling Han was their brother, and on the other, Ling Han had also analyzed various illogical points one by one. Both proved that Ling Han's words were not false. The Heaven's Sword sect and the other 5 ancient great sects, they deserved to be killed for their evil intentions. Only if we split open the skies will we be able to fight back. The Rain Emperor nodded. Mu Rongqing nodded as well, his expression extremely serious. Although he was usually carefree and willful, in the face of this kind of truth, he no longer smiled mischievously. Ling Han was overjoyed, and exclaimed, "Big brother, how about you become the emperor?" Rain Emperor had been the ruler of the Rain country in the first place, and in terms of the power of the nation, his understanding had exceeded both Ling Han's and Mu Rongqing's, and perhaps even Feng Poyun's. The Rain Emperor thought for a moment, but then shook his head, and said, "I can't. It's not that I don't want to take on such a heavy responsibility, but I can't. Third brother, power of the nation is not as simple as you think. There's a saying that goes, what kind of stomach you have will determine how much you can eat. If it was to unite this whole realm and establish a single country, then the power of the nation of this level would be akin to an unprecedented divine herb. An ordinary person would only be incapable of taking such strong a medicine, and after consumption, would die as his body exploded from the strength of the medicine. That's right, third brother. Amongst us 3 brothers, your talent is the highest, so why don't you be this emperor? Big brother and I will be responsible for assisting you. Let us 3 brothers join forces, and conquer this whole realm first." Mu Rongqing laughed. "If third brother is unwilling, Hunyo would be fine too. The Rain Emperor smiled. He knew that Ling Han was not the kind of person to care about power struggles, and pulled Hunyo in to convince him. Hunyo happily took on the position, declaring, "Then you all have to call Nyo Milady Queen in the future." Ling Han merely grinned bitterly, and said, "If we let this little girl be an empress, the country would descend into total chaos on the second day. Then it'll be third brother." The Rain Emperor nodded, his mind made up. He, too, was not one to be overly fond of power. Otherwise, with his talent and power, he would have been qualified to break through to the flower blossom tier in the desolate north, and it would be a piece of cake for him to unite all the 9 nations of the desolate north under his rule. Ling Han and his brothers began to talk about further details of establishing their own country and splitting open the skies. Something like establishing a country was naturally a small matter to the Rain Emperor. He had been on the throne for many years, and the only difference was the size and the overall power level of the territory. What else was different? Splitting the skies, though, was much more difficult. If they wanted to bring the whole realm to ascend with them into the immortal realm, how powerful would they need to be? It was a must to reach the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and besides that, they had to gather the combined power of the nation of an entire realm, which was a very terrifying thing. An ordinary person was naturally not much, but what about 10,000, or 100 million? Every person, via power of the nation, would contribute a portion to the person in charge of splitting open the skies. How powerful would this kind of power combined together be? Moreover, there was no shortage of cultivators in the realm, and if they joined together, there were really not that many Shattering Void tier cultivators that could take them on. However, Ling Han was different. He had cultivated the indestructible Heaven Scroll, and had also formed the Body of Diamond. His physical resilience was on par with that of precious metal of the same level, and when he reached the Shattering Void tier, his physique would be on the level of divine metals. If he could improve this physique of his to its maximum capacity, then how could it be that the amount of energy he gathered be unable to split open the skies? By that time, Ling Han would be in a very strange condition. His cultivation level would only reach the peak of this realm, but his strength would have reached immortal level, and his battle prowess would far exceed even that. To battle with the heavens, and to bring the whole realm and ascend. The more they talked, the more excited the 3 brothers became. This was a grand move. If they succeeded, their names would be forever remembered, and they would become legends. From today onwards, we have to work even harder on our cultivation. Let's first enter into the Restore Heaven Academy, and rope in various prodigies. When the time comes, we will then establish our country, and have all these people gather under our banner. To battle with the 5 ancient great sects, the mere thought of it is enough to make my blood boil with excitement, and my fighting spirit soar. Ling Han withdrew a great amount of valuable medicines and herbs for his 2 brothers. Firstly, they could use these resources for their own cultivation, and secondly, they could use these treasures to open the path for themselves and befriend various geniuses. After all, if one wanted to pull another into one's camp, what else was there to do but to use both a carrot and a stick? The 5 of them exited the Black Tower. The enrollment test for the Restore Heaven Academy was about to begin. They did not go together. The Rain Emperor and Mu Rongqing also went their separate ways. This test was their first step to bribe and rope in their fellow candidates, so they naturally had to act separately so as to expand their sphere of influence. Hunyo and Zhu Xian were still with Ling Han. The 3 of them arrived outside the mountain gate of the Restore Heaven Academy. It was something that had just been built, and there was a powerful ultimate elite standing guard, with several young disciples that were placed in charge of reception on the sidelines. These young disciples have all been transferred over form the 5 great sects, and they obviously wore expressions of pride. Even if they were unable to enter into the Restore Heaven Academy, they were still incredibly arrogant. Were the names of the 5 ancient great sects not enough for them to be arrogant? The first step was the measuring of bone age and cultivation level. Those that were unable to satisfy the lowest requirements would not be qualified to even attempt the first part of the test. Zhu Xian was up first. She stretched out her jade-like slender hand, causing that disciple who was in charge of measuring bone age to blush. The hand that was holding the golden needle kept shaking, and he was completely unable to pierce it into her skin. This hand was really too beautiful, just as if it had been carefully carved by the gods. Every inch was close to perfection, and he couldn't bear to pierce his needle into such a beautiful hand. He made several failed attempts to pierce it with the needle, but, ultimately, he had no choice but have a female disciple come over, and only then was the test for measuring bone age completed. 22 years old, this female disciple announced, an expression filled with shock appearing on her face. A flower blossom tear cultivator at 22 years of age, she was an impressive prodigy, and could be ranked in the top 50, no, the top 30 even in the 5 great sects. This was an extreme shock. The ultimate elite standing on the side stroked his beard, appearing very happy. Looks like there was going to be a satisfactory sapling this time round again. He swept a glance at Zhu Xian'er, and was slightly surprised. This girl had obviously disguised her appearance. Still, changing one's appearance would not be able to change one's bone age. No one insisted that one had to come with their real face, and this did not break any of the rules. The thought merely flashed through the mind of this ultimate elite, but he did not say anything much. The next one was Hunyo. Such a small little girl. A few disciples could not believe their eyes. Some of them even laughed and joked around. This was the Restore Heaven Academy enrolling disciples, not a game. Now, everyone was lining up to undertake the test for bone age, and behind them, someone immediately called out, "Don't mess around, hurry up and get out of the way. Such a tiny little girl had better go home and drink her milk. Big brother has a sweet here, do you want to come over and suck?" Peng. A vulgar man was just about to say something filthy, yet it enraged Hunyo. With a flash, her little figure had appeared in front of him, and thrown out a punch. As lightning crackled, she not only sent the man flying, but had even turned him into a corpse. Zizizi, there was white-colored lightning twisting around the man's body, making for a terrifying sight. All of a sudden, utter silence fell. Those that had come to take the test for bone age were either in the flower blossom or the spiritual infant tier. How could there be anyone that wanted to bluff their way in? That vulgar man was well known for having a taste for kids, but as he originated from a great clan, and he himself had also reached the flower blossom tier, he was also looked highly upon. Thus, no one had stood up against him before now. He was a flower blossom tier cultivator, yet was directly killed in an instant. How could this not surprise the masses? Hunyo placed her hands on her hips, and then humphed, and said, "You dare to have rotten ideas about Nyo, you really are seeking your own death." Chapter 657, Testing Bone Age. Chapter 657, Testing Bone Age. Henyi. Good, good, good. What a shocking little sapling. That ultimate elite who had just been taking a cat nap immediately snapped his eyes open, and even began clapping. As for the fact that a prodigy had just died, so what? This place was lacking anything but prodigies. Furthermore, since he could be killed with a single strike, what else could he be but trash? He was absolutely unqualified to enter the Restore Heaven Academy. "Little girl, what's your name?" this great cultivator asked happily. He was the law-keeper of the Absolute Saber sect, and his name was Guoliang Cai. He had the battle prowess of the deity transformation tier, which was enough to suppress the current young generation. Otherwise, he would not have been able to keep watch here. When he looked at Hunyo, his expression was filled with tenderness. If it wasn't for the fact that his cultivation level was too low, he really would want to take Hunyo in as his true disciple. But a little girl that was only about 6 or 7 years old actually had the cultivation of the spiritual infant tier. How could he possibly be able to teach such a prodigy? Most likely, only the sect master and the elders would be qualified for this task. "Nyo is Ling Han's Hunyo," Hunyo said in a slightly confusing way. She then ran over to Ling Han and held his hand, looking completely like a naive, angelic little girl. If it wasn't for the fact that the vulgar man's corpse still lay on the ground, around which lightning was still popping, perhaps everyone would be fooled by how pure and adorable she looked right now. Guoliang Cai swept a glance over Ling Han, and had his mind set. If Ling Han's talent was nothing impressive, he would kill Ling Han so that he would not affect this little girl any further. Such an excellent little sapling would be of great use. More importantly, she was still young, so she could be easily brainwashed, and have various ideas instilled into her. Hunyo once again stepped forward for her bone age to be tested. This time, even the few disciples were extremely respectful. She was one that had obtained the adoration of a deity transformation tier law keeper. As long as one wasn't an idiot, they should be able to tell how shocking her future prospects would be with how Hunyo was so fierce even at such a young age. They could only revere her. 7, over 7 years old, not yet 8. Her bone age was very soon tested. However, Hunyo was a bit angry. It was a bit painful to be poked by a needle, which caused her to glare ferociously at the disciple who had tested her bone age. This ferocity was really very terrifying. It had even surpassed the level of the spiritual infant tier. That disciple actually lost control of his bladder in fear, and stench spread out from him. Ling Han was also surprised. He had not thought that Hunyo had also broken through to the spiritual infant tier. However, the little girl had always been weird, so no matter how fast her cultivation rose, it was completely normal. Guoliang Ci was very displeased, and shouted at that disciple who had lost control of himself, "Get lost and clean yourself up before you come back." "Yes, yes." That disciple nodded rapidly before turning around and breaking out into a run. Yet, in his heart, there was an unbelievable contrast. Hunyo's glare was scarier than even Guoliang Cai. How could that be possible? Guoliang Cai was in the deity transformation tier. Deity transformation tier. Ling Han stepped forwards, and the aura of the spiritual infant tier moved, proving that he had the qualification to take the test for bone age. At this time, he had restored his original appearance. Since he had made the decision to establish his own country and split open the skies, he decided that he would show his true face to the public in future. A heaven-grade alchemist could be claimed to be able to do whatever he wanted wherever he wanted. Please stretch out your hand. For Hunyo's sake, the disciple in charge of conducting the test for bone age used the word please. Otherwise, he would have directly shouted for those that were not directly enrolled into the academy. Their talent was nothing too impressive, so why would he need to be too polite? However, Hunyo's appearance made them understand one fact, and that was that the world was really too big. Maybe a stunning, peerless prodigy would really appear at any time. "You dare to act fierce to Nyo's Ling Han?" But Hunyo was still not very satisfied, and glared at the disciple, her ferocious gaze on full display again. That disciple was instantly so scared that he fell down onto the ground. He felt as if he had become the target of a primal beast, and goosebumps appeared all over his body. He almost lost control of his bladder. He finally understood what his companion had experienced just now. This little girl was practically not human. Ling Han smiled softly, and said, "All right, don't make trouble." It was only then that Hunyo changed to all smiles, and happily took Ling Han's hand, looking completely like an obedient little girl. Even if you died because you were fooled by her deceptive appearance, she would not pay you your life back. Whoever believed her would be really unlucky. Ling Han stretched his hand out. That disciple had also stood back up after wiping the cold sweat off his forehead. His hand held a golden needle, but it was endlessly trembling. Though he had not been scared to the extent to lost control of his bladder, it was not a small scare either. "I poke." He calmed his turbulent emotions, and poked the needle at Ling Han's wrist. But the golden needle that was as thin as a hair off a bull's hide was actually unable to penetrate Ling Han's skin. "Don't use your origin power to protect," that disciple said in slight displeasure. However, he had yet to finish his words when an astonished expression appeared on his face. What a monster! He obviously had not used origin power to protect himself, yet why was his skin so tough that even the penetrating bone needle could not pierce it? The penetrating bone needle was a tool especially used to test one's bone age. It could easily penetrate the skin of a spiritual infant tier cultivator, reaching all the way to one's bone, and extract a little bit of bone tissue. Then, the measurements inscribed on the needle would reflect the corresponding age. The younger one's age, the more accurate the measurement, which was measured in years. But after 100 years old, it would be 10 years, 20 years, 50 years as values, because by the time one reached about 400 to 500 years old, there would be practically no change in one's cultivation for at least the next 50 years. Yet the penetrating bone needle was actually incapable of penetrating Ling Han's skin. Furthermore, he had not used his origin power to defend himself, either. How could this be possible? It couldn't be that he had encountered a monster, could he? Quickly, quickly. How long do you want to keep poking Ling Han? Hunyo was displeased. Do you have something against Ling Han? You keep poking him again and again, without event taking a breath in between. With Hunyo rushing him, that disciple was naturally even more nervous, and his hand trembled even more violently. Putting aside the fact that he could not pierce through Ling Han's skin, he did not even manage to pierce Ling Han's hand. Trash. Guoliang Cai stepped up, and shoved that disciple aside after snatching the penetrating bone needle. Then he poked the needle at Ling Han's hand. Wang. The golden needle dropped, and quickly became short. The needle went through? No. Guoliang Cai was astonished in spite of himself. The penetrating bone needle became short not because it had penetrated Ling Han's skin, but because Guoliang Cai had used too much strength, while Ling Han's skin was too tough, so it was directly crushed. That was why it looked like it had pierced through. Fuck, this monster. The people around them had initially been laughing mockingly at that disciple who had shamed himself, but now, not one could even grin. How shocking was a physique like that? It remained unharmed even when a deity transformation tier cultivator moved personally. I'll do it myself, Ling Han said, and drew the demon birth sword. He slashed himself once, and instantly, his skin broke. At first, Guoliang Cai was dazed. Then, he immediately pierced the needle through the open wound, and touched Ling Han's wound once before then drawing out the penetrating bone needle to take a look. An expression of great astonishment again appeared on his face, and he exclaimed in spite of himself, over 19 years old, not yet 20, I'm about to faint. The people around them were once again shocked speechless. There actually appeared yet another monster. Though he was not as monstrous as Hunyo, if one took into consideration his terrifying physique, he was not really that far off. Ling Han put away the demon birth sword, and did not even need to circulate the indestructible heaven scroll. Body of Diamond had already engraved all the secrets of the scroll into every bit of his flesh and blood, so his skin automatically healed. There was not even a tiny scar left behind, just as if he had never been struck by his sword. This caused the crowd to once again exclaim monster in spite of themselves. How were they supposed to beat Ling Han? The toughness of his physique was more or less at the limit of a spiritual infant tier cultivator, so how many people of the same cultivation level could penetrate his defense? Furthermore, his recovery ability was strong enough to cause one's hair to rise on ends. He was practically an invincible existence amongst all the peers of the same cultivation level. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,